Divorce TV with Wally Marcus. Introduction to Divorce with attorney Robert Michael Hirsch. Support for Divorce TV is made possible in part by funding from the Center for Divorce Mediation, 577-1202. Welcome. This is Divorce TV, and my interviewing today is Robert Michael Hirsch. I know you like the Robert Michael, so that we can do that. So if I don't say Robert Michael, remind me, okay, and do that one. I'm your host, Wally Marcus, and I've been a divorce mediator for over 25 years. And you can get more information about our program as you see at the bottom of the screen with our webpage. And you can contact us with questions or anything else that you'd like to contact us about and tell us about so we can improve the show. Robert, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been in private practice in Tucson since July of 1988, and I handle divorce matters. I handle other civil practice matters as well, such as business and real estate and estate planning.
Good. And if people want to get more information about you, where can they get that?
I have a website, like everyone else it seems in the world. It's on the screen at robertmhirsch.com.
Good, thank you. You do a lot of collaborative divorce. Can you tell us a little bit about collaborative divorce? Oh, sorry, we're talking about collaborative divorce today. We're talking about divorce introduction to divorce. And I'm sorry, I got a little confused there myself.
We're going to do another show.
We're doing another show on collaborative divorce. We're doing today's on introduction to divorce. Can you tell us a little bit about the basics of divorce?
Well, there are certain basic things that have to occur in order to have a valid divorce in Arizona. One of the parties has to be what we call domiciled in Arizona for 90 days before the initial documents are filed with the court, what we call the petition for dissolution. So domiciled really just means that you've established some sort of residency, in the legal sense, that you're living here and it's been for at least 90 days.
Okay. And what are the legal reasons for getting a divorce in Arizona?
This is a no-fault divorce state, as many other states are around the country, so those old ideas of hiring a private investigator and going around and taking snapshots of your spouse doing something they shouldn't be doing or what we say are irrelevant here. So all you need to be able to say to the court when it's finalized is that your marriage is irretrievably broken with no reasonable prospect of reconciliation.
What does that really mean in layman's terms?
In layman's terms, it just means that one of the parties doesn't want to stay in the marriage anymore. And they don't have to have a reason, and they don't have to find something wrong with the other spouse. They just say that, that we do not have the kind of relationship that will allow for us to continue to be married.
What happens if one of the people don't want to get divorced and one does? What happens then?
Unfortunately, they really can't stop it. There is an ability to ask for a free counseling session with the Conciliation Court, Pima County, and I think most of the other, certainly Maricopa, and some of the other counties have what they call a conciliation court, where you can ask for and receive at least one free counseling session to see if that process might help save your marriage. But in the end, if that doesn't work and one of the parties wants to terminate the marriage, then they have the right to.
How often in your practice do you see where somebody starts a divorce action and then it doesn't go to conclusion?
Well, not very often. And when I have my initial intake with people when they come in, I always try to make it a point to see when I'm talking with them about whether or not there is a chance that they might reconcile. I think it's the lawyer's duty to look and see whether it may be just a temporary thing, it may be a recent fight, that's happened that's not really long-term significant. But for the most part, people go through with it when they start. They realize how serious it is, and by the time they've gone to see a lawyer, it's usually been a problem for whatever reason, or they just went out for a long time.
You find that by the end of the process, the person who doesn't want the divorce sometimes gets reconciled to it?
Yes. I mean, it's a different process for everyone, I think, but when the other spouse realizes that they can't stop it from happening, I think over time they realize they have to move on.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit how you got a divorce started?
Well, you file the parties, and it doesn't matter. We call them petitioner or respondent. The petitioner files the initial set of documents with the court. You file a petition for dissolution. It's a very generic document.
Is it something that people need an attorney for, or is it better to have an attorney for?
Well, it depends. I mean, there is information through the court. I believe there are kits in the library, in the Pima County Library, and there's information online with the Pima County Superior Court to file initial pleadings and do some of the other documents. So it depends on the complexity. As lawyers, we like to say we wouldn't pull our own teeth, we would go to a dentist. But if you have a really simple situation, perhaps without children, then some of the online forms or the forms that are available in the library might be sufficient.
Does that mean also no property or less property also would help?
Yes.
Okay. So can you just a little more details about what it's like to start a divorce and how it works?
Right. You file the initial paperwork, which is the petition for dissolution and some other documents where you're telling the court about whether or not there are minor children. You then, the other side then the other spouse has an opportunity to file a response to that and say that there are issues to be worked out, and if you don't file a response, then within a certain period of time the court could actually default the other spouse, and whatever the person filing, the petitioner, wants, as long as it's reasonable, that person would get it without any consideration of the interests of the other party.
Yeah, but sometimes, even though they file a default, or the other person's interests change, or the parties come up with an agreement later on?
Sure. Yeah, there are many cases are done by agreement in a more amicable way, where the respondent or the other person that didn't file doesn't need to file a formal response. But you have to be careful, because you need to have a lot of trust in that relationship that the other side isn't going to try to default you. Now, you will get notice. You get what's called an application and affidavit for default. So the other spouse that didn't file, so they'll know that that's the intention, and they have a certain period of time to file a response.
Any sense of what I'm sure you do, the costs, filing fees, and on this one?
Yeah, I don't have them in the top of my head.
I have trouble remembering them. It's a few $100s.
Well, I think it's $216 for the petition for dissolution. If there are children and you're asking for joint custody, you have to take a class. It's called a domestic education class. It's done through the conciliation court now, and that's an additional $30. And then the response fee, I think, is something like, I may be a little off, something like $171 plus the $30.
And what about papers being served, or how does that work?
There's two different ways to serve the papers. As in any lawsuit, you have to give legal notice to the other side, to the other spouse, and that can either be done by the other spouse accepting them by the spouse who's filing and just signing a document we call an acceptance of service, or if it's not going to be comfortable to do that, you can use a process server.
Good. And